We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
To get to the heart of this country, one must examine its racial soul. Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as an ethnic melting pot, in things racial, we have always been, and we, I believe, continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards.
Outgoing Attorney General Eric Holder's transparent statement echoes the intent of European billionaire George Soros' attempt to divide and conquer America's diverse populace with his Open Society organization. Soros reportedly gave at least $33 million in 1 year to a range of activist groups within the United States. And he has been funding his Open Society movement since the early 90s. One of these organizations, Black Lives Matter, rather than moving in the obvious direction of unifying society, has instead marched into the lives of all Americans with their divide and conquer whining.
I gotta go to Ross right now, homie. If I don't get there, I'm gonna get fired. I got 6 kids to feed. Day goes on, homie. He's out every day. Deal with it the right way. Not like this.
This was the scene this morning. Thousands of irate commuters at a standstill, some getting out of their cars and taking matters into their own hands.
The Black Lives Matter movement, made up of mostly millennials, those born from 1980 to 2000, a generation removed from the unifying progress Americans had made since the Civil Rights Movement, a generation raised on gangster rap and video games, is going to school the older generation that lived through it on race relations?
Stripped of possessions, stripped of innocence, and then stripped of life.
Joshua Babish describes the brutal deaths of his brother Jordan Babish and his friend Jacob Kudla. The teens from Westland went missing in July of 2012. Their lifeless bodies discovered days later in a field on Detroit's east side. Yet when Young had his chance to apologize to the families, he did nothing of the sort.
I'd like to say sorry to the families of Ayanna Jones, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and I want to apologize to them for not being able to get justice for their loved ones who was murdered in cold blood. And in respect for the peaceful protests, I want to say hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter.
Lana Mercer of LouRockwell.com reports that now a Princeton-based educational test has found that not only do Generation Y, aka millennials, trail their overseas peers by every measure, but they even score lower than other age groups of Americans. Millennials in the U.S. lag in literacy, including the ability to follow simple instructions, practical math, and hold on to your hat, a category called problem solving in technology-rich environments. Worse yet, even the best educated millennials stateside couldn't compete with their counterparts in Japan, Finland, South Korea, Belgium, Sweden, or elsewhere. Altogether, the top U.S. Generation Yers, millennials, in the 90th percentile, scored lower than their counterparts in 15 countries. Black Lives Matter was completely clueless when Planned Parenthood ironically joined their movement. Planned Parenthood, funded by billionaire eugenicist Bill Gates, George Soros, and the Rockefeller Foundation, championed by Margaret Sanger, a woman responsible for the death of countless black lives.
In 1939, Planned Parenthood pioneer and leftist Margaret Sanger began the Negro Project. To bring people along willingly, she enlisted black preachers to support sterilization. She outlined the deceitful plan in a letter to Clarence Gamble of the Procter & Gamble empire.
We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population.
Now, billion-dollar Starbucks has thrown their money at race relations.
Everything in their power to make sure Clinton becomes the next president.
Hillary has always been in Planned Parenthood's corner because she knows women deserve someone who is in theirs. She will always stand up for the right of every woman to access a full range of reproductive health care including abortion, no matter her economic status.
Hillary Clinton not only supports expanded access to abortion, she's also made clear she believes personal convictions of average Americans shouldn't stand in her way.
Laws have to be backed up with resources and political will, and deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed.
A brand new poll by Marist shows Clinton is out of step with the majority of Americans on this controversial topic.
Gingrich, establishment scared of Trump because he didn't belong to the secret society. Let's play that clip.
And now they're faced with a very real prospect of Donald Trump becoming the leader of the party, and it absolutely drives them crazy. They just cannot imagine sharing. Well, because he's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's uncontrollable. You know, he hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. And I think that they don't see him. They have no idea how to relate to him.
I can't believe how everything we've talked about for decades is just naked out in the open. Scalia died, the secret society ritual. Yeah, he's not part of the society. And by the way, there is a society at the top.
It's a complicated situation, but I think everyone can agree, except for the media organizations that now have ordered their employees to destroy Trump. There's at least 3 of them. And I can't say who they are right now because I don't have it nailed down, but I am 100% convinced. And these media organizations have actually put out, if you support Trump, your career is done here. All right, and that's how intense it is.
Are you talking about?
I'm talking about big conglomerates.
News organizations, not individuals.
Right. News organizations have sent, not officially, but through the corporate grapevine, that we don't want anybody supporting Trump. And if you study it, you can see which they are. So, all right, let's just take the first 30 minutes.
Chaos last night outside a Donald Trump rally in California. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets, some waving Mexican flags, bringing traffic to a standstill. This car was trapped by protesters.
That's not cool, guys.
Finally, the driver makes a getaway. Police showed up on horseback and in riot gear. Go back! Go back! Protesters scrawled foul language across squad cars. The crowd cheered when an effort was made to overturn this cop car. One driver did donuts. Look how close he came to the people on the street. Some Trump supporters found themselves getting knocked around.
You all right, buddy?
Nearly 20 people were arrested last night during the mayhem. Inside the amphitheater, the Republican frontrunner's speech went uninterrupted.
Man, this is a lot of people.
Back in New York, an intern for the Trump campaign opened an envelope addressed to Trump and found it contained a suspicious white powder. Emergency crews swarmed over to Trump Tower and determined the powder was harmless.
It's obvious that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's obvious he can't control his mind or his tongue. And what I've suggested, if now, because he's the nominee for the party, and he's entitled to briefings from the CIA, for example, I said publicly, give him fake briefings. Pretend you're briefing him. Don't tell him anything that you don't want to get out. And that's how I feel about it. I think that the man is a loose cannon. I think he's done so much to hurt our country with our international relations already.
But as a Republican nominee, isn't he entitled to get those briefings?
Give him fake briefings.
What does that even mean?
It means they'll tell him stuff. He won't know the difference.
You're basically telling the intelligence community to lie to him.
No, I'm not going to lie to you, but I just don't have to tell you everything.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt, and when I say corrupt, I'm talking about totally corrupt, political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. There is nothing the political establishment will not do, no lie that they won't tell, to hold their prestige and power at your expense. And that's what's been happening. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. As an example, just one single trade deal they'd like to pass involves trillions of dollars controlled by many countries, corporations, and lobbyists. For those who control the levers of power in Washington, and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat, like they haven't seen before.
The new FBI release of documents from Hillary's investigation left CNN's panel stunned.
Unlike 17,500 emails that she lied about turning over. The server wipe. Within weeks of there being a report that she had a private server, it was wiped. She thought that C, which stands for classified, stood for cookie or something, which stands for classified. She thought that drone strikes are not classified. She said that the reason she used the private server is for convenience, and that she only had one device. She used 13 BlackBerries, let me finish, and 5 iPads. This is somebody who is absolutely disqualified from becoming president. They destroyed BlackBerries with hammers in the State Department. That's not what we wanted the president to say.
Actually,
and
Evan,
hold
on. Can you fact check that? Hang on, Evan Perez. Hammers, fact check that for me, please, on the fly.
Yes, they did, Brooke.
As
you mentioned, there were 13 devices, mobile devices, and 5 iPads that the FBI said that, you know, in some way were used with her private email server, and they did, in some cases, just destroy them with hammers when they were done using them.
Hillary Clinton says in a press conference recently, "Oh, I'm eager to turn over all the emails so the American people can see." Well, now we know the State Department hasn't turned over all the emails. We also know those emails link Hillary Clinton and the State Department for the first time to the Susan Rice talking points, that this was all a video and a demonstration. Do you remember? We now know on the night of September 11th, the State Department and the White House knew this was a pre-planned terrorist attack. 2 days later, Hillary Clinton stands over the bodies of the fallen and talks about a video. Susan Rice goes on television and says it's a video, it's a demonstration. Hillary Clinton later denies that she had anything to do with those talking points. False. She never revealed a private server in her basement until it was discovered. And then, when it was discovered, she wipes it clean nearly 2 years after she leaves the Department of State. Megyn, I think we now have enough information to understand that Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, has engaged in gross dereliction of duty, she has engaged in a cover-up, and she has blood on her hands.
And this is a Fox News alert. Intelligence sources have, in fact, confirmed exclusively to Fox News that 100 men took part in what they are calling a coordinated assault on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi last week. In addition, the sources say the terror strike that took the lives of 4 Americans was carried out with precision in 2 separate waves. Now, the terrorists were heavily armed and not only rocket-propelled grenades, but mortars as well. And also new today, and I warn you, this footage is very graphic. We can now show you for the first time on this show Ambassador Chris Stevens' body being found by looters and later dragged through the streets of Benghazi following the shootout and the storming of our consulate there. Now, what you're seeing, a still photo captured of that horrific moment. Now, you can also make out that this photo has a bloody gash. Right there, you can see it on Stevens' head. Now, in light of these breaking developments about the coordinated nature of the attack and now seeing the reality of what our ambassador went through, it is becoming more and more clear that this White House was misleading you, the American people, in the wake of this tragedy. Now, they first denied that it was a terror attack. Now they say it was an obvious terror attack. We have a president dodging questions yesterday about the lack of security at the consulate, and a UN ambassador has been caught on camera blatantly lying about what caused the incident.
Putting away the softballs, Univision's Jorge Ramos brought what's been missing during Dem debates: hard-hitting questions.
On the night of the attacks in Benghazi, you sent an email to your daughter, Chelsea, saying that Al-Qaeda-like group was responsible for the killing of the Americans. However, some of the families claim that you lied to them. Secretary Clinton, did you lie to them?
Just to refresh, here's what Hillary Clinton and President Obama said.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
It was a crude and disgusting video, sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video.
The problem is, they both knew it wasn't the video. Hillary Clinton said so in her own email.
You're looking at an email you sent to your family. Here's what you said. At 11 o'clock that night, approximately 1 hour after you told the American people it was a video, you say to your family, 2 officers were killed today in Benghazi by an al-Qaeda-like group. And most significantly, the next day, within 24 hours, you had a conversation with the Egyptian Prime Minister. You told him this: we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest.
So what did Mrs. Clinton have to say about being called a liar by a Benghazi victim's mother, Patricia Smith?
You know, look, I feel a great deal of sympathy for the families of the 4 brave Americans that we lost at Benghazi. And I certainly can't even imagine the grief that she has for losing her son. But she's wrong. She's absolutely wrong. At the time I emailed with my daughter, a terrorist group had taken credit for the attacks on our facility in Benghazi.
Hang on. Let's take that back.
We know, not we think, not it might be, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest.
Within 16, 18 hours, they rescinded taking credit. They did it all on social media. And the video did play a role. We have captured one of the lead terrorists, and he admits it was both a terrorist attack and it was influenced by the video.
So which is it? First you say it was from a video, but in an email you claim it was a planned attack. Now it's both? Do you trust Hillary Clinton?
State Department experts knew the truth. You knew the truth. But that's not what the American people got.
Full-scale war.
We know year by year what's going to happen, and they know we know. It's only you that they tell these fables, and you buy it and spread it to the citizens of your countries. Your people do not feel a sense of the impending danger. This is what worries me. How do you not understand that the world is being pulled in an irreversible direction? That is the problem. But they pretend like nothing's going on. I don't even know how to get through to you people anymore.
And the big news is, a month later, almost a month later, after we first reported on it, in mid-June, there has been almost no Western coverage of it at all. And that's exactly what Putin was getting at. Whether you love Putin or hate Putin, if the leader of Russia, with thousands of intercontinental ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, is telling the West, I don't know how to get through to you, your media is controlled, you're being manipulated, NATO is putting missiles on our borders, we're having to move missiles in, you've overthrown Ukraine, you're on an offensive, you're funding and protecting radical Islam, do you know what you've done? Do you know what you've done, as he said at the UN, destabilizing the Middle East? Why are you doing this? Where are the sound minds across the political spectrum who should be stopping this? Russia has 3 overseas military bases. You have hundreds. You have your spies inside our country trying to overthrow it. You have your CIA people trying to get into our embassies. You are at war with us. And the average American, the average European, the average Brit is not aware of this.
Another threat that President Obama mentioned was ISIS. Well, who on earth armed them? Who helped to arm the Syrians that were fighting against Assad? Who created the necessary political climate that facilitated this situation? Who pushed for the delivery of arms to the area? Do you really not understand as to who is fighting in Syria?
But the issue of a major world leader saying that we're moving to the brink of war and it's not in our news, that's the big story. It shows how incredibly controlled things are. Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, is plunging right now. Much bigger than Lehman Brothers. If it continues, it'll make 2008 look tame in comparison. Elites are building armored fortresses and redoubts all over the world, admitting they believe collapse is coming. Governments are digging in. Russia is digging in. Our supposed government is collapsing our borders and bringing people in with diseases and ignoring the Supreme Court rulings. It seems an age of madness or megalomania is now upon us. We've seen great evil out of Russia. We've seen great evil out of Germany. We've seen incredible evil out of communist China. But America has had its problems as well. And now we see Europe and the United States and the whole Anglo-American establishment filled with hubris and arrogance, just violating domestic laws, persecuting the press, leaking classified material and getting away with it. This is the stuff that collapses and major wars and calamities are made of. And most historians point out the parallels between the start of World War I and what we now see happening today, and the parallels with the start of World War II and the climate politically we see today. Even the Pentagon admits that we're probably witnessing one of the most unstable periods in human history right now. But Obama says we've got the best economy ever and the world's the most stable it's ever been, as they do everything they can to push us into crisis. And it's not just the Democrats. They have their establishment Republican cohorts that are working with them. I have never been more concerned about what's happening on the planet today. And if we're able to raise the alarm, you, the freedom lovers out there, the people that want to have a civilization, the people that don't want to have war, if we're able to come together, whether we be black, white, old, young, conservative, libertarian, Catholic, Muslim, whatever it is, we cannot continue to have these conflicts. We cannot continue to have this globalist crisis brand where they stir up the problems, exacerbate the crises, and then gain power out of it. Because all the money in the world is going to be worthless if we have a major nuclear war. And that's what the Russian foreign minister and many others say we're going towards. And Putin is now begging with the press to trigger some type of debate and saying, I can't believe how none of this gets through to the people of the West. Please spread this video far and wide.
A new batch of Clinton emails out this morning is raising questions about a donor to the Clinton Foundation and how he ended up on a government intelligence advisory board. ABC's Brian Ross is here with more on that story. Good morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, Amy. The newly released State Department emails being made public here this morning reveal how Undersecretary of State Hillary Clinton, a major donor to the Clinton Foundation, was put on a sensitive government security advisory board, even though he had no known experience in the area. Members of the State Department's International Security Advisory Board include some of the country's most prominent figures on American nuclear strategy, all with top-secret clearances. But in 2011, the Clinton State Department also added this man, Rajiv Fernando, a wealthy Chicago commodities broker with no known connection to the national security world.
I'd like to invite to the stage Raj Fernando.
What he was known for before and after his appointment was raising and giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democratic campaigns and as much as $250,000 to the Clinton Foundation.
It's a bold statement, but Hillary and Obama created and manage ISIS, and they will do anything to distract the public's awareness of this undeniable fact, a fact born of the globalists' insatiable need to create an enemy and control both sides of endless wars and social engineering that add to the New World Order's trillion-dollar treasure chest. But times are changing, and the true enemy of humanity has been exposed. WikiLeaks have been dropping the cannon fodder for the past few days, and among the insults of religious leaders and minorities and communications that could harm national security, and a revelation that Bill Clinton was given $1 million birthday check from Qatar for pay-to-play access in Haiti. At the top of that heap, damning evidence that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, with the aid of Saudi Arabia and Qatar, gave financial and logistical support to the Islamic State and other extremist Sunni groups. The Daily Caller reported Clinton sent the email on August 17, 2014 to Podesta. It was an 8-point plan to defeat ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Clinton's email said that the United States should support Kurdish forces on the ground with U.S. military advisors and avoid the use of a conventional ground operation. The email reads, "While this military-paramilitary operation is moving forward, we need to use our diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistics support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region." The key phrase being clandestine financial and logistical support. As usual, the United States is funding both sides of the war, just like Henry Ford, Prescott Bush, IBM, and AT&T aided Hitler, just as the CIA backed the Muslim Brotherhood during the Cold War and later funded and created Osama bin Laden. As Counterpunch wrote, former British Foreign Secretary Robin Cook told the House of Commons that Al-Qaeda was unquestionably a product of Western intelligence agencies. Mr. Cook explained that Al-Qaeda, which literally means an abbreviation of the database in Arabic, was originally the computer database of the thousands of Islamic extremists who were trained by the CIA and funded by the Saudis in order to defeat the Russians in Afghanistan. Adding more fuel to the Clinton campaign funeral pyre, Mark Turi, an American arms dealer accused by the DOJ of violating the Arms Export Control Act and lying to the State Department on official applications, claimed high-level contacts inside and outside the U.S. government requested he explore options to arm opposition fighters as they tried to overthrow Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi. Among the documents and emails he claimed to possess are exchanges with members of Congress, as well as with high-ranking members of the military and State Department employees. Meanwhile, as our criminal government continues to side with the powers that fuel ISIS, a broken ceasefire in Syria creates a growing divide that Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will attempt to mend on Saturday in Switzerland.
Americans voting for president on November 8th must realize that they are voting for peace on planet Earth if they vote for Trump. But if they vote for Hillary, it's war.
Widespread panic is consuming Russia. After holding a nuclear evacuation drill involving 40 million people, Russia is calling all of its citizens living abroad to return home. Russian military leaders are complaining that thousands of ISIS fighters are being allowed to leave Iraq's terror hub in Mosul to join the fight in Syria, as Russia flexes its military muscle in the Middle East by holding joint paratrooper exercises.
I called Donald Trump a bright personality, and there's no doubt about how bright a personality he is. Trump said he wants to restore full-fledged relations with Russia. What's bad about that? All of us welcome it, don't you? In any case, we'll work with any president elected by the American people. However, the Americans keep lecturing others on democracy. But are their own elections really that democratic? There were two cases when a U.S. president was elected by a majority of delegates who represented a minority of the population. Is that democracy?